Ms. Bates.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Doctor, just want to clear up a few things before we get started. First, want to ask you to clarify what you said before on direct examination about your payment. I believe you said you've been paid upwards of $25,000 for this case?
Correct.
But you were hired by the defense, correct?
That's correct.
So when you said that you were paid by the state, you're referring to the fact that if it's an indigent defendant, then you would be paid out of an indigent defense fund, correct?
That's my understanding, correct, yes.
But no doubt in this case, you were not appointed by the court.
Right.
You were not hired by the state.
Correct.
Defense counsel sought you out and hired you.
Yes.
And I believe you've given testimony as recently as 2018 that in death penalty trials, you have testified exclusively for the defense, correct?
That is correct. In death penalty cases, correct. I've worked for prosecutors, but not in capital cases.
Right. And there have been numerous death penalty cases that you've testified in, but always for the defendant, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And always hired by the defendant.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about how you became involved in this case. When did they first reach out to you about meeting with Timothy Jones after his arrest?
Well, like I say, I had to have received a phone call, I imagine, or possibly an email, but probably a phone call, just asking if I had time to take a case, and that's about it. Like I say, I don't have my billing in front of me, but if I saw him in early 2017, knowing what my schedule is like, I typically am booking 3 to 6 months out, so I can estimate that probably late 2016 I was contacted.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a few more questions about that, but first, just want to make clear, you are here to testify that after his arrest, it's your opinion that he meets the criteria for a diagnosis of schizophrenia, correct?
Yes, that's right.
You are not giving us an opinion as to his mental state on the date of the killings of his children, correct?
Correct. I did not perform a criminal responsibility evaluation. I'm leaving that to others.
So you're leaving that to others, and you're offering no opinion in this court today as to his mental state regarding the killings.
Right, as it relates to criminal responsibility, correct.
On the date and time of these killings, which was August 28, 2014, correct?
Correct.
And when you said you're giving no opinion on criminal responsibility, I'm going to go a little bit further and just have you explain that in terms that we all understand. You're not giving an opinion as to whether he knew the difference between right and wrong, correct?
Correct.
You're here to testify that based on your examination of him, the first being February 21st, 2017, it's your opinion he met the criteria for schizophrenia, correct?
That's correct. Of course, you're doing it by historical information as well. But certainly as of my evaluation, yes, that's right.
So I want to follow up on that. I believe your first interview with him was February 21st, 2017, correct?
Yes.
So approximately 2.5 years after the murder.
Approximately so, yes.
And that meeting or interview with him was 2.25 hours, correct?
If that's what I wrote down in my report, yes.
So 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Correct.
And then you had one more meeting with him September 27th, 2018, correct?
Yes.
And that meeting was 1 hour and 5 minutes, correct?
I'll take your word for it. If it's in my report, yes.
So the entire time that you spent with Timothy Jones leading up to this diagnosis after his arrest was a total of roughly 3.5 hours.
That's right.
2 interviews.
Yep.
And you testified that you did rely on some historical data, meaning all of those records that you told us about earlier, family history, all of those things. But ultimately, when it came to giving a history of delusions, hallucinations, that came straight from Timothy Jones, correct?
Yes.
So it was self-reported by him.
Right. That's how we make the diagnosis.
Is it fair to say, doctor, when you are relying on the patient for that history and for that diagnosis, is it fair to say that you should consider whether or not he's been a reliable historian in the past?
Sure, to some extent. But the mentally ill are often unreliable, so you have to take it with a grain of salt.
So mentally ill people can be unreliable and even giving histories about themselves. Is that your testimony?
Yes, that can happen, sure.
But they can also intentionally lie or withhold information when it benefits them, correct?
Sure, anyone can do that.
So were you aware in this case that the defendant has told many different stories about what happened on the night of the murders?
I'm not aware of many, but I didn't interview him about the incident itself.
Did you consider all the different versions of stories that were told to various law enforcement officials along the way?
I couldn't recite it for you, but I'm certainly aware of what he said to police, sure.
Okay. So the night that he was initially stopped by law enforcement on September 6, 2014, you're aware that he initially told the officer who stopped him at the checkpoint that his vehicle smelled because he had garbage.
I think, yes, I recall reading that. And ma'am, I'm sorry, I know you're moving farther away from me, but there's an AC thing right above my head, so it's very difficult.
I'll speak up.
Okay.
And then, in addition to that, we're aware that one of the officers who arrived there at the scene of that stop questioned him about where his children were.
Yes.
And you're aware he told that officer, "I don't have any children."
Yes.
And then when he was re-questioned by the same officer, he goes on to say, "Well, I have 3 children, but they're in South Carolina with their mother," correct?
I'm not sure I recall that, but if you represent it that way, I'll agree.
And then he told numerous law enforcement officials along the way that the children had been put out of the car at Walmart, that they were safe, but he put them out of the car, correct?
I recall seeing something like that once, yes.
Led law enforcement to believe that they're still alive somewhere in South Carolina, correct?
Yes.
And then eventually, when he's pinned down by an FBI agent, and this detective here, a question about the contents of his vehicle, where he had bought numerous items to dismember the bodies of his children, you're aware he came up with numerous lies to explain away those items, correct?
Yes, he made several statements about why he had those things, yes.
He gave an explanation for why he bought the muriatic acid.
Yes.
He gave an explanation for why he had those jab saws, said he was going to cut tree limbs with them.
Yes.
He even gave explanations as to why he had blood in his Cadillac Escalade.
I don't recall.
And having reviewed that long list of materials that you told us about, and the $400 an hour to review those materials, do you recall him saying that the reason there was blood in the car is because of an animal? An animal had bled in his car.
I don't remember. I didn't memorize all the records I read.
And then ultimately he said, "Well, it's me. I bled in the car."
I don't recall that.
So is it fair to say he's given a lot of different versions about what happened up until he ultimately admitted to killing children?
That doesn't sound like a lot of different things about what happened. That's a lot of explanations about why things are where they are, but that's not an explanation of what happened that night.
So in your opinion, he would still be a reliable historian, having told all those different stories?
I guess it depends on what history we're gathering.
And that's part of what I'm asking you about, is whether or not you, as the diagnostic doctor in this case, whether or not you consider him to be a reliable historian. And it sounds like, even considering all of those things I just mentioned, you do consider him to be a reliable historian.
For the most part, yes. About psychiatric symptoms, yes. In describing his past history, there were things he could not recall. There were things he was not able to fill in for me. And that does happen. But I never thought he was lying to me about those things.
So you pretty much take him at face value, correct?
No, I don't know that I take anyone at face value. I'm looking for consistency or inconsistency. And I saw consistency in both his appearance, in terms of what I was able to observe, and also what he was telling me for psychiatric symptoms, understanding that I did not interview him about any of those things you're just talking to me about. But those don't have anything to do with schizophrenia either, frankly.
So when you questioned him about drug usage, what did he say in that regard?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that experimentation started in his, but age 12, 13 to 15 years old or so. That again, and that he had a longer period of time where he was sober, but that it worsened after his divorce. Started using Spice as well in about the 3 months, like May to August, right before this happened.
August. Okay,
Right.
so he did report to you that he was using the drug known as Spice, illegal here in South Carolina, in that period of time between May of 2014 up through August of 2014.
Yes, that's right.
Roughly that 3-month period. How many times or how frequently did he report to you that he was using Spice?
I believe that it was a daily, but I'd have to check my report again.
So he told you that he was using Spice daily. Did you question him as to whether he was using Spice on August 28th, the date that the children were killed?
He, as I recall, he said he had used it earlier that day.
So he told you he used Spice the day of the killing.
That's my recollection.
But yet you're also aware he told that FBI agent and this detective he didn't use Spice at all that day, correct?
Yes.
So now we're talking about something specific as to the date of the killings, and that's not reliable information, is it? Because he's giving two completely different stories.
Well, you know, some of these drugs impair memory as well. You know, for that particular issue, yeah, there may be an issue of reliability in terms of what happened or what didn't happen. That's not pertinent, however, to my diagnosis.
And that's reliability as to a material event on the day of the killings, correct? Whether or not he used Spice on that day.
Right.
And when we talk about Spice, you're familiar with the effects of Spice, which contains the ingredient A.B. Kanaka.
Yes.
And those effects include paranoia, agitation, anxiety, confusion, altered mental status, and hallucinations, correct?
Sure, that can happen.
And he tells you he's using that drug with those side effects on the date of these crimes.
Yes,
That's what he told you.
that's right. But, you know, of course, that's why I further inquired about the typical effects that drug has upon him. And he reported the opposite of those types of symptoms.
So he tells you, I'm using Spice on the date of the killings, which can cause all of those symptoms, but I didn't experience any of them.
Oh, I'm not talking about that day particularly. I'm talking about 3 months prior, a month prior, any of the times he's using it. He said that it quieted the voices for him.
So for him, it didn't seem to exacerbate any type of condition because he's not experiencing anything when he's on Spice, according to what he tells you.
Right.
No adverse reaction at all.
At least that he's aware of. I imagine there probably was some because drug users often do not have good insight into their behaviors when they're using, but that's what he's reporting.
And then you mentioned some of what went into your determination as to whether or not he may be malingering, and that's just a fancy term for faking it, right?
Yes, it's faking with a purpose. It's faking it to get out of something. That's typically what malingering means.
Faking it to get out of a charge, for example.
Could be.
And you said part of what you considered is that when you met with him on those two occasions, for that total of roughly 3.5 hours, that you noted that he had a restricted range.
Of affect, yes.
Flat affect.
Correct.
Doctor, you're also aware he was taking extremely high dosages of the antipsychotic drug Geodon at the time.
Correct. Yes, I would.
Having been prescribed to him following his arrest, part of the treatment plan that other physicians came up with.
Yes.
And that drug, Geodon, is known to result in exactly what you're describing, correct?
You know, it can, but in my opinion, no, that's not what this was. The reason being is because when I did see him, he was on a high dose. The second time I saw him, he was not. His affect is the same.
And let me ask you about that a little bit more. What do you consider, as a psychiatrist, what do you consider to be a high dosage of Geodon?
80 twice a day. I've seen 100 twice a day. I don't think I've ever seen it. He was treated with 160 twice a day. I don't think I've ever seen a dose that high before. That tells me about a severity of symptoms.
So he was taking up to 320 milligrams of Geodon a day, correct?
Correct. How he was standing, I don't know, but he was able to have a conversation with me, no problem taking it.
And one of the other things that you mentioned in considering that he's not faking it, as you put it, is that he could not stay on task That's one of the things I wrote down as you testified earlier on direct examination.
Yeah, what I was talking about was thought disorganization. That's a very difficult symptom to fake. That's correct. He did exhibit thought disorganization.
All right, so when we talk about thought disorganization, inability to stay on task is specifically what you mentioned was your observation of him during that interview. I'm going to ask you to take a look at what is States 186 in evidence, and this includes the known side effects of that drug, Geodon. And specifically as to the cognitive and motor impairment known to be caused by that drug, and that'd be States 186.
You want me to read the whole thing or just the first page?
No, I just want you to review it.
Okay.
So considering the known side effect of Geodon and the fact that he's taking twice what you would consider to even be a maximum dosage, beyond, you said, anything you would ever prescribe for a patient. Doctor, it's certainly within the realm of possibility that what you observe to be cannot stay on task is a result of the Geodon side effects, correct?
No, I didn't see anything in him that I just read on that paper. I know what side effects look like from medicine. He didn't have it. Not in either of my examinations. And again, remember, I saw him a second time when he was on much less of the Geodon then, and they added actually another antipsychotic. So he was taking 2 when I saw him the second time. He was not somnolent. He didn't have impaired, all these things that are written here, no.
So it's your opinion then that he was functioning absolutely fine cognitively, having taken 320 milligrams of Geodon?
Yes, at least when I saw him, yes. I felt that way.
You felt he was functioning at perfectly normal levels?
I wouldn't say he's perfectly normal. He's schizophrenic. So within reason for what I expect somebody with schizophrenia who's taking the medicines he's taking, I was able to interview him. Let me put it to you another way. If I had had concerns that the medicine was affecting things, I would have written that down in the report. I would have maybe seen him more often, something else. If I had concerns about the information that I was getting or how I was seeing him that day, because I have seen people who are heavily sedated on medication, and I'll make those types of statements, either in reports or to the attorneys.
So on that same topic, which would be the ultimate effects of that 320 milligrams of Geodon, one of the things that you noted that you relied on was testing conducted by Atura Raleigh at the request of the defense back in 2016, correct?
Yes.
And that testing was also conducted after he had been prescribed Geodon, correct?
Yes.
And you specifically note that the results of that testing done in 2016 after his arrest showed a full-scale IQ of 89?
Right.
89 IQ. Doctor, you had that big list of things that you relied on. You're aware this individual is a computer engineer, correct?
Yes.
Graduated summa cum laude from Mississippi State University, correct?
Yes.
Numerous academic awards and achievements leading up to his graduation, correct?
Sure.
And then performing not just satisfactorily, but exceeding expectations at a high-level advanced job at the Intel Corporation in 2014, correct?
Yes, I saw some job evaluations that said that. Some were satisfactory, yes, but that's right.
The most recent one in 2014, just months before these crimes, he was noted to be working exceedingly above expectations and was promoted in March of 2014 by Intel. You're aware of that?
Right.
So that's his status leading up to his arrest. And then after his incarceration, he's prescribed these, what you consider to be high level of dosage level of Geodon, above what you would ever prescribe for a patient. And his full-scale IQ in 2016, while on Geodon, is 89, correct?
Right.
And you relied on that information.
I did. I'm not a psychologist. They're the ones who have to give the tests. She believed that to be accurate. She did not find him to be faking in her evaluation. I think it represents a deterioration in cognitive functioning.
Are you taking into consideration today, during your testimony, what role Geodon played in that?
Yes, Geodon does not reduce IQ scores.
So you don't believe that his cognitive functioning was impaired at all by those high dosage levels of Geodon?
Typically, when you see a side effect of a medicine causing some sort of problem on testing, it typically has to do with motor functioning or processing speed. Those are typically the two areas that you see it in. And so I can certainly submit that, and she actually says that in her testing too, that she thinks that some of the scoring would be affected because of those two things, but she would not attribute it all to that. And there are other things that were affected that would not be caused by medicine.
So another thing that you addressed and seem to rely on is the information about the car accident that he was in back in 1998 when he was 15.
Right.
And you've also reviewed, as part of that Appendix A that was marked for identification, his testing scores from the state of Illinois 11 months after that incident, correct?
I'd have to see it again. I don't remember. Are these academic testing?
Correct.
Okay. I would just point out academic testing is not neuropsychological testing. Academic testing is not meant to measure brain functioning.
So when we talk about the Illinois testing, would it surprise you to learn that 11 months after the injuries, he tested above his school, his district, and the state in numerous levels of academic excellence?
Again, I think he was at least a very smart person, so that doesn't necessarily surprise me. And again, as I mentioned, the smarter you are, the more you can mask the symptoms you're having.
When you talk about masking the symptoms, doctor, you would also have to mask it in multiple levels of academic testing on multiple subjects, correct?
Sure, but the question is strange. This is not how schizophrenia would present. We don't give schizophrenics academic tests and see how do you do.
And my question is specifically about the traumatic brain injury because that's something that you noted. So we're not talking yet about what your diagnosis would be regarding schizophrenia. I believe your testimony is that will present later in life, most commonly.
Most commonly, correct.
But I'm asking about what you termed the brain injury because it was something that you noted.
Sure.
Specifically, it said you relied on.
Fair enough.
The injury occurred in March of 1998. And so I'm asking that 11 months later, tested by the state of Illinois, specifically in the area of application and decision-making, he tested above the school district and the state. Are you aware of that?
That's fine. I may have read that. That's not a frontal lobe test. I would put no stock in that whatsoever as regard to frontal lobe functioning.
All right. So his test results post-injury would not be of any significance to you?
No, I'll certainly consider it, and I did consider it. But I'm saying that sometimes you see effects from the injury immediately. Sometimes they may take 5-10 years to present. So it really does depend. What I'm saying to you is you're using the wrong test to measure functioning, is what you're saying. By implying that somehow academic testing equals no brain damage is false. That's not an accurate statement. So that's what I'm trying to, that's not right.
So what is it, doctor, that you mentioned the Chantix, both in your opinion and in your testimony today? Why did you mention that?
Because I was asked the question.
Well, how exactly does Chantix relate to this case involving Timothy Jones?
Well, I believe he was taking Chantix to try to quit smoking somewhere right before the incident occurred, but I don't really know the details on it. I know that I seem to recall that he may have missed a dose or two here or there, so then he doubled the dose to make up for it. All I know is that it can cause neuropsychiatric effects, but I'm not saying more than that.
So to show you what states Exhibit 197 in evidence. Were you provided that document?
I can't recall. If it was on the list, then yes, but I can't remember a 3-page medical record.
Well, this medical record relates specifically to the Chantix that you mentioned and that you just testified to on direct examination.
I think I literally said one sentence about Chantix.
Okay.
So it's not really a big part of my opinion by any means.
Well, one of the things you testified to on direct is that Chantix can aggravate a condition.
Yes, that's right.
Testimony?
That's true.
But you don't have any information as to whether Timothy Jones was using Chantix anywhere around the time frame of these crimes, do you?
Not that I can recall, no, but not sure. Again, my examination was not a mental state at the time of the event, so I really wouldn't have dug that deeply into that.
But and that's why I'm asking why it was testified to on direct. What connection does it have to the schizophrenia diagnosis?
You're asking the wrong person. You should ask the attorney that. He asked me a question about the medicine. I answered the question about the medicine.
All right. So, and doctor, regarding this Chantix, you're aware that according to Timothy Jones, he was prescribed Chantix in February of 2014, roughly 6 months before the murders. According to him, he did well on Chantix in the past.
Right here. Smart.
So as to the Chantix, were you made aware that he took roughly 9 pills since February 2014?
No.
Noted according to the exhibit that there were no adverse effects, so that really doesn't play a role in your diagnosis at all, correct?
I didn't see anything in here, what I just read, where they actually talked to him about adverse events as a result of it.
Well, did well in the past.
Sure, but that's I don't know what that means. I assume what that means is he quit smoking with it. But that doesn't mean he didn't have an adverse psychiatric effect from it. You can still have a side effect, but still help you quit smoking.
Well, if he did, he certainly did report it to that doctor at the time of that prescription, correct?
Or the doctor didn't ask. I mean, this looks to me like a primary care doctor's note. They have a lot to do in one visit, and I can guarantee you, because I get referrals all the time from primary care doctors, they are not taking in-depth psychiatric histories.
The bottom line is, doctor, you don't have any information as to when he last took Chantix, correct?
I agree with you on that.
schizophrenia, there is most often a downward slide affecting one's life and career, correct?
That is often seen, yes, correct. Doesn't always happen, though, but yes.
I believe your testimony earlier on direct is that during those 2 meetings with the defendant, during that 3.5 hours, quote, I did not see disorganized behaviors, correct?
Correct.
And again, doctor, you're giving us no opinion whatsoever as to whether he knew the difference between right and wrong on August 28, 2014, correct?
That's right. I'm not providing an opinion on that.
Everything you're telling us is based on your diagnosis of him after his arrest, correct?
Yes, that's right. Now, of course, keep in mind, nobody wakes up one day and is schizophrenic. So I can see through the past history that he was developing symptoms. And obviously he's being treated in the jail, but everything is post-crime.
And when you say you can see, you're referring to you can see from his self-reported symptoms to you, correct?
Yes, that's one part of it, but there's also in the social history other people who were interviewed who noted weird things about him, talking to himself, talking like people who were there weren't there.
Who is that?
Babysitter, and I just can't recall her name.
Are you referring to Crystal Valentine?
Yes.
But you never actually talked to Crystal Valentine, have you?
I did not. I read an interview of her.
All right. Crystal Valentine never said that he saw people that weren't there.
I didn't say, no, I didn't.
Okay.
That's not what I said. That is not what I said. I said he talked to people that were not there. That's what she said.
All right. I believe, doctor, if you're going to rely on that information, what Crystal Valentine reported is that she was in another room and heard him in another room talking, correct?
Correct, to no one.
And do you know whether or not he was on the phone?
I don't, but she didn't say he was on. No, but that she would have said something like he was on the phone.
Right.
I mean, the context of the interview was, that was weird. I thought there was somebody else in the room with him, and there wasn't.
And Crystal Valentine was also his girlfriend at the time, in addition to being his babysitter, correct?
That's my understanding.
We're talking about roughly 2012 when he was going through his divorce.
That sounds right. I got to trust you on that.
And you're also aware he was using substances such as alcohol and marijuana frequently during that time frame, correct?
I am aware.
Nothing further.
Mr. Secor. Mm-hmm.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
You may step down.
Thank you, guys.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
All right, y'all's planning, the jury's gonna eat about 12:30-ish. It's about 5 minutes to 12, so with that in mind, we'll go forward. Isn't that right, Madam Clerk? 12:30? Okay.
Judge, your microphone.
Is it on or off?
We're having trouble.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was talking to my jury. We've got lunch coming at 12:30, so I want them to be mindful of that.
Thank you.
They kind of know more about the witnesses than we do. All right, Mr. Young?
Sorry, I was thought we were breaking about now. The defense is called Brenton Centrelli.
solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about the truth shall be the truth. I do. Once you're seated, state your full name, spelling your last name.
Eric Brenton Sadramelli. Last name is Sadreameli.
Counter, may we approach on this?
You may. Y'all don't talk about the case.